Folks, it has now been a week since we have gotten a good look at McTaco Tits, and everyone is asking, where in the world is Donald Trump? He has no scheduled events for Labor Day, no one saw him golfing while staying on the course, and this is the latest photo that we have of him. You can see that he still looks slack-jawed and a little bit out of it, which is important for later. Trump, or more likely somebody posting for Trump, put on Truth Social, "Never felt better in my life. Yeah, gee willikers, that's real reassuring." Seems like an odd thing to say, and actually everything that he's put on his Truth Social recently has been very odd. These tweets don't really even sound like him, and I'm not an expert in Trump, but I have read a lot of his tweets, and this one's just a little too coherent. Not enough all caps, not enough spelling mistakes, not enough sentences that start and don't end. And just a couple hours ago, somebody spotted an open window in the second story of the White House and a mysterious object being tossed out of it. I'll play the whole video for you guys here, so make sure you subscribe to Really American, and let's jump right into it. Now, I'm going to have to mute it because they seem to be in a restaurant and there's copyrighted music playing, but they don't say anything that you need to hear anyway. You can clearly see the window is open here, and somebody's got their arm sticking out of it. They're looking out, and apparently, I guess there must be somebody down here that they're talking to, but boom, you see that just bag jump out. The window stays open for quite a while here, and then somebody appears. There they are. They reappear for a second. Yeah, that goes out too. Okay, so that looks like they threw out something long and white and then something in a black trash bag. Now, I don't know why they couldn't just walk whatever it is down the stairs or throw it down the trash chute. I'm sure the White House is well equipped to deal with any kind of trash, so this kind of seems like they're trying to get rid of something without anybody else seeing it. Unbeware of the fact that somebody is seeing it from blocks away. Look at that. If the press was still able to do their jobs, they would ask Caroline Leavitt about this immediately. For what reason would there need to be anything thrown out of the top story of the White House? The only thing that I can think of is something having to do with Trump's medical care that they don't want people to know about. The leading theory is that he's had some sort of stroke. Now we're entering conjecture theory here, moving into speculation land, but the best explanation I could find is from a medical professional. I'll show it to you guys here, and afterwards we'll look into some more evidence that it might be true.
Here's how I know the president has had a stroke and the White House is lying about it. I'm a physical therapist with a doctorate in my field and 14 years experience in home health care with geriatric patients. I mentioned that specifically for the chiropractors in my comments who think they know anything about medicine. Back in July, the White House released a medical report on President Trump that included 3 new medications: rosuvastatin, ezetimibe, and a daily regimen of aspirin. If they're attempting to treat high cholesterol, rosuvastatin will do that all by itself. You would only add ezetimibe as a second-line defense for someone who is an even higher risk for a cardiovascular or cerebrovascular event, such as a previous heart attack or stroke. Older physicians who are not quite as up on the literature may prescribe daily aspirin as preventative for stroke and heart attack, but it's been a while since it was actually recommended that way, as the literature has told us more. Now, daily aspirin is used as a preventative for someone who's already had stroke and heart attack as a blood thinner. In summary, Trump has had a stroke or maybe even a heart attack in the past, and they are publicly reporting the medication regimen that prevents another one from happening. Normally, they would just lie about things like the chronic venous insufficiency bullshit. His physical back in April would have caught that. It's a lie. While J.D. Vance and Stephen Miller are fully prepared to take over once Trump is out of the way for health reasons, possibly by invoking the 25th Amendment, they don't want Trump out of the way before the midterms of 2026. They will hustle as quick as they can to finish their consolidation of federal power over all 50 states in the union. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Here's a thread by journalist Adam Conkran putting together some of the same connections that doctor did. He believes that there's growing evidence that the White House is covering up the fact that Donald Trump has been dealing with TIA strokes, and that he likely had a more significant ischemic stroke this week. TIA strokes would explain the symptoms that we've been seeing in Trump, with his leg dragging, his eye drooping, but those generally resolve quickly. Ischemic ischemic strokes leave a lasting impact and can range dramatically in scope and severity. And we've seen Trump exhibit these symptoms over the last few months, especially with his leg dragging. Like especially when he was supposed to walk in a straight line on the red carpet when he rolled it out for Putin and instead wandered around like a lost duck. Now, eye drooping and leg dragging, those things can just be attributed to age, but the first sign that we got that there was actually something seriously wrong with him was, of course, when that bruise started to form on his hand, also known as the mark of Cain. Now, at first, they try to pass it off as, oh, Trump just shakes thousands of hands a day, and that's why the backs of his hands are bruised, which would make no sense, right? I don't know about you guys, but when you shake somebody's hand, you generally don't even touch the back of their hands. Then at his annual physical, we saw the medications that Trump was being prescribed, which the doctor talked about. Adam Cochran said, at first, I thought this might be normal medication for managing cholesterol, and I've certainly heard of preventative aspirin use in the past, but I decided to interview some heart specialists, and I'm glad I did. There are two general takeaways I heard from multiple specialists. Daily aspirin is not recommended for prevention anymore. The other doctor also said the same thing. An aspirin regimen is treating something else. Statins like rosuvastatin will manage cholesterol alone, whereas ezetimibe will be used as a second line if the patient is at high cardiovascular risk, such as prior strokes, heart attacks, or arterial disease. Then it's used for stroke prevention. And then in June, we see Trump's swollen ankles, also known as cankles, and for the first time, the White House medical team is willing to admit he's got chronic vascular insufficiency, and his bruising is related to aspirin regimen and shaking hands. They keep coming back to this claim as aspirin does indeed make bruising easier, but there are three problems with this claim. Bruising is seen on both hands, not just his dominant hand. The next problem, chronic vascular insufficiency is not a sudden onset issue, and swollen ankles is an immediate symptom. An annual physical in April would have caught the CVI back then if ankles were going to be swelling. That's exactly what the previous doctor said as well. The chronic vascular insufficiency doesn't make any sense because they would have caught that in the physical. But the third problem is that the bruising is monthly, usually around the 24th. I've seen this claim being floated around before too. Has anybody noticed that the bruising only appears around the 24th? And here's some receipts. In February, it was on the 25th. And then in August, again, it was on the 25th. It seems much more likely that the president is being monitored monthly for something, and then also occasionally getting an emergency IV as well. That would explain the bruising on both hands, as it's common for somebody of his age to get bruising on his hand when they do an IV. So what does this all mean? When a patient has had a TIA stroke, they have temporary symptoms, but would have been started on aspirin, rosuvastatin, and ezetimibe to prevent future ischemic stroke risk. The patient having TIAs may have temporary symptoms for 24 hours, including face drooping, leg dragging, and trouble walking in a straight line. Patients who experience very mild strokes that are not TIA, such as a lencular stroke or a minor ischemic stroke, may have persistent but barely noticeable symptoms causing drooping of the lip, eyelid, and eyebrow, which would be on the same side as the leg dragging symptom. And we see here that his right side has been slowly more droopy than the other. If a patient under White House level medical care was seen having a stroke, they'd be scanned to rule out a hemorrhagic with the White House portable MRI, and then could receive alteplase, a clot-busting peripheral IV often given in the hand for elderly patients. If that patient was on aspirin for cardio risk management and or potential calcium blockers, we'd expect bruising of the hands and swelling of the ankles. If they had had a mild ischemic stroke, we'd expect the patient to be on bed rest for 24 to 48 hours, which would explain the first half of him going missing, and then by day 2 or 3, able to take small or assisted steps, which would explain him leaving the White House to go to his golf course but not actually golfing. And the patient may have facial droop, flatter facial creases, or their mouth agape due to facial muscle weakness, which we're seeing a lot of in Trump. Not only this picture here from yesterday, I believe, but also the picture from this morning, which shows that his mouth is agape. Even though they could walk at this time, speech and complex motor skills may still be recovering, and we notice that Trump has oddly kept the press pool very far back from the White House and hasn't allowed them on the golf course. We also notice that he was dressed the same as the last time he went with Kai, and that MAGA influencers were given old pictures from January and other golfing pictures from June 27th. We've seen a lot of this on the right, Charlie Kirk and even Fox News posting old pictures trying to pretend that this is what Trump is doing this weekend. So unless the White House can provide a transparent explanation of his health that better fits these circumstances, I'm forced to conclude that they are lying to the American people and hiding that Trump had a stroke. It's time for the press to push on this and get clarity. So to me, this seems pretty cut and dry. I mean, we'll see next time they have him in front of the camera, but I don't think they're going to have much more runway here when it comes to coming up with a cover-up story. If the orange has really started to rot this weekend, it was pretty good timing because of Labor Day today, so he had more time to come up with a plan. But a stroke is pretty hard to hide. John Fetterman changed from Jedi to Sith Lord after having his stroke, so the difference is sure to be noticeable. They could keep canceling events and pushing back press conferences this week to give Trump time to recover, but we all know that Dumpy Don is a narcissistic megalomaniac that feeds off of national attention, so him hiding from the cameras is more suspicious than anything. Now, I'm not getting my hopes up or anything, God forbid he comes back better than ever, but what started out as an internet conspiracy might actually end up having some legs here. You guys can stay informed on what the mainstream media doesn't want to report on by subscribing to Really American. I'm Tony Hinderman, and I'll catch you next time.